A trial date was set, June 23, 2026, Federal Courthouse, Tucson, Arizona. The man who inserted himself into the worst moment of the Guthrie family's life, who sent text messages demanding Bitcoin while an 84-year-old grandmother was missing, was supposed to stand in front of a jury. That didn't happen. Instead, the trial was pulled. A motion to continue was granted, and in its place, a different kind of hearing was scheduled, one that carries a very different meaning. July 2nd, 2026. A change of plea hearing. Now, in a case that has already given us masked suspects, encrypted ransom notes, a fractured investigation, and revelations that took months to surface, something has shifted in one of its side stories. But here's the thing about side stories in this case. They have a way of leading somewhere. Before we get into it, everything you'll hear today is drawn from publicly available court records, FBI statements, and verified reporting. We're not making conclusions investigators haven't made. The case as it stands has been nearly 5 months since Nancy Guthrie vanished. 84 years old. A grandmother. The mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. Gone from her home in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona, in the early morning hours of February 1st, 2026. You already know the broad shape of this case. You know about the blood on the porch, confirmed to be hers. You know about her pacemaker app disconnecting from the phone she left behind at exactly 2:28 in the morning. You know about the doorbell camera that captured a masked, gloved figure approaching her front door, footage that wasn't saved to the cloud because she didn't have the right subscription, but was eventually recovered by the FBI from residual back-end data. You know about the ransom notes, the Bitcoin demands, the deadlines that came and went without resolution. You know that her family has been on camera again and again, pleading, Savannah, her brother Cameron, her sister Annie, reaching out to whoever is holding their mother, asking for proof of life, asking for any signal that she was still breathing. And you know what investigators have been saying, quietly, for months. There is no confirmed suspect, no arrest, no body, no closure. What's changed, in recent weeks, is the shape of what we now know about the ransom notes. And what's coming on July 2, in a federal courthouse in Tucson, is a hearing that raises a question this case hasn't fully answered. How much does Derek Colella actually know? Who is Derek Colella, and what did he do? Let's be precise about who Derek Colella is, because precision matters here. He is not the person who took Nancy Guthrie. The FBI made that clear from the moment they arrested him. There is, in their words, no evidence to connect this to Nancy's case. He is not a suspect in the kidnapping. That is established. What he is someone who saw a family in crisis, followed the story on television, and made a calculated decision to insert himself into it. Derek Anthony Colella, born July 25, 1983, age 42, Hawthorne, California, in the Los Angeles area. A former intermediate clerk at the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services. On February 4, 2026, the same day Savannah Guthrie and her siblings posted their first Instagram video, begging whoever was holding their mother to reach out to show proof of life, Derek Colella was watching. And shortly after that video went up, he moved. He used a VoIP application, a voice-over internet protocol service that generates a fake phone number, to send 2 text messages to Nancy Guthrie's oldest daughter, Annie, and Annie's husband, Tommaso Cioni. The messages read, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." There's a typo in that message. The word were, where he meant we're. Court documents preserved it exactly as he typed it. About 3 minutes later, he placed a brief phone call, 9 seconds, to one of Guthrie's family members. 9 seconds. He didn't say much. He was testing whether they would respond. He told the FBI, when they caught him, that he sent the messages to see if the family would pick up, that he wasn't trying to actually ransom anyone, that he just wanted to see what would happen. The FBI was less interested in his explanations than in his digital footprints, which he left everywhere. The VoIP account was registered to his Gmail address, his full name, the IP address traced back to his home. The FBI had him in custody within 24 hours of the text being sent. He was arrested on February 5, 2026, taken from Hawthorne, California, charged the next day in federal court in Santa Ana. The charges and the digital evidence. The federal charges Colella faced were specific. Count 1, transmitting a demand for ransom in interstate commerce without disclosing his identity. Count 2. Using a telecommunications device with intent to abuse, threaten, or harass a person. 2 counts. Federal charges, the kind that carry real prison time. FBI Special Agent in Charge Hythe Janke stood at a press conference and said it plainly. To those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this situation, we will investigate and ensure you are held accountable for your actions. This is an 84-year-old grandma who needs vital medication for her well-being. U.S. Attorney Timothy Corshane called it directly. Grief profiteers will be held accountable. That phrase, grief profiteer, defined how prosecutors saw Kalela, a man who looked at a family's worst nightmare and saw an opportunity. The evidence against him was not ambiguous. His Gmail, his IP address, his home, his own admission, once Miranda rights were given, that he had sent the messages. He was released on a $20,000 bond, with conditions: no contact with any victims or witnesses, electronic monitoring of his devices, pretrial supervision. He pleaded not guilty at his initial appearance, and the case proceeded. Until it didn't. A pattern. Kalela's prior legal history. Here's the thing about Derek Kalela that the coverage of his February arrest didn't fully emphasize. This wasn't his first encounter with federal investigators, or with charges involving money he didn't earn. In October 2025, just months before he texted the Guthrie family, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced that 13 LA County employees had been charged with a sprawling unemployment benefit fraud scheme. They had collectively stolen more than $430,000 in benefits between 2020 and 2023, while still receiving their county paychecks. Kalela was one of those 13. As an intermediate clerk in the Department of Health Services, the department whose very function was to help the public determine whether they were eligible for benefits, he was accused of pocketing nearly $10,000 in unemployment benefits between May 2020 and January 2022. The prosecutors said he submitted false declarations under penalty of perjury, claiming he earned less than $600 a week while he was still on the county payroll. Nathan Hochman put it this way at the time: when a civil servant steals from the government, that trust is broken. The scale of fraud in these cases is shocking. Kalela's arraignment in that case had been set for November 20th, 2025. And then, 2 months later, he was sitting in front of a television watching the Guthrie family beg for their mother's life. And he sent those texts. The profile that emerges is of someone with a demonstrated pattern of financial exploitation. Small scale, calculated, opportunistic. A man who saw systems, unemployment benefits, a grieving family, and looked for an angle. That pattern matters now, as we look at what's about to happen in federal court. The critical distinction: his notes versus the real notes. This is the part of the Kalela story that people have most often glossed over, and it's the part that matters most. Kalela's texts, the Bitcoin messages he sent to Annie Guthrie and her husband, were never linked to the original ransom notes sent to media outlets. Let that sit for a moment. There were, from the earliest days of this case, at least 2 separate channels of ransom communication. The notes, sent to media outlets, to Cold News 13, to TMZ, to Scripps News Tucson, and then Kalela's texts, sent directly to family members. Investigators made this explicit from the beginning. Kalela's messages were an imposter act, someone who saw the real notes being reported on and decided to mimic the pattern for his own purposes. But here's what changes the significance of that distinction in the context of this video. For months, the original ransom notes were treated publicly as unverified, unknown origin, unknown authenticity. Law enforcement wouldn't confirm or deny. And then, on June 22, 2026, 4.5 months after Nancy Guthrie vanished, CBS News, NBC News, and ABC News all published simultaneously. Investigators familiar with the case now believe the original ransom notes, the ones sent to media outlets in February, likely came from the person or people who actually abducted Nancy Guthrie. That's the development that reframes everything. The ransom notes, what investigators now believe. The first note arrived on February 2, 2026, one day after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. It was sent to at least 3 media outlets via their online tip lines, 2 local Tucson television stations including Cold News 13 and TMZ. Cold has confirmed it received the note and shared the IP address from which it came with law enforcement. That first note contains specific, granular details about the inside of Nancy Guthrie's home, details that, according to investigators, included what an Apple Watch looked like on her bedroom floor and the condition of her back porch light. The kind of details that someone would only know if they had been inside, if they had been watching, if they had planned. The note demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin. It set a deadline of 5 p.m. on February 5th, a secondary deadline of February 9th. Both deadlines passed. No payment was confirmed. No resolution came. Then, on February 6th, a second note arrived. This one went to Cold News 13. It did not repeat the demands. It carried a different kind of message entirely. According to sources who reviewed the note and spoke to CBS News, NBC News, and ABC News, the second note claimed that Nancy Guthrie had died. The note indicated that the abductors did not mean for her to die. She died, it claimed, shortly after she was taken. After that second note, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings posted a video. "We received your message, and we understand," Savannah said. "We beg you now to return our mother to us, so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." For months, investigators asked media outlets not to release the full content of these notes, to protect the investigation, and to preserve the ability to authenticate any future communications. Both notes were sent using the same type of secure encrypted server to hide the sender's IP address. Not from the same IP address, but through the same class of infrastructure. Cold News 13 shared those IP addresses with law enforcement. And investigators now believe, based on the evidence available to them, that both notes came from the same person or group of people, and that person or group is likely responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie. Savannah Guthrie, in an NBC interview in March, said she believes the two notes she and her siblings responded to are real. She said she tends to believe those were real. She also said on the Today Show, after the June 22 reports, "I want to take the opportunity to ask people, to really beg people, to come forward. Somebody knows something. We are in agony and we cannot be at peace. We need your help. We are begging for your help. The investigation. What else we know." While the ransom note timeline has dominated recent news cycles, the physical investigation has been unfolding in parallel, and there are details worth revisiting in light of what we now know. The doorbell camera. Nancy's Google Nest camera was found to be missing from its mount. Investigators examined whether the suspect removed it. The FBI recovered footage from residual back-end data, video that should have been gone but wasn't. That footage showed a masked figure, wearing gloves, approaching the front door in the early hours of February 1. The individual used a gloved hand to cover the camera. Plants were placed in front of it to obstruct the view. In a second clip, the same person was seen walking toward the home's archway with their head tilted downward, avoiding the angle. That tells you something about this suspect. Not panicked, not amateur, deliberate. In February, the FBI released a physical description. Male. Approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build. Wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, a model sold exclusively at Walmart. The FBI released images of the backpack for public comparison. A pair of black gloves was recovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. They appeared to match the gloves seen in the doorbell footage. The DNA recovered from those gloves was submitted to the FBI's CODIS database, the Combined DNA Index System. No match was returned. The DNA came from an unknown male, which means whoever left those gloves has no prior DNA profile in the national database. The investigation has involved more than 13,000 tips submitted to the FBI as of mid-February, with the Pima County Sheriff's Department reporting over 18,000 calls. A signal-sniffing device was deployed via helicopter to try to detect the signal from Nancy's pacemaker. There was a reported moment of friction between the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department over where key physical evidence, including the gloves, would be processed. Reports indicated that Sheriff Chris Nanos sent evidence to a private lab in Florida rather than the FBI's National Crime Laboratory in Quantico, Virginia. Nanos denied that this caused any delay or rift with the FBI, calling the reports inaccurate. The Guthrie family has increased their reward to $1 million for information leading to Nancy's location. The FBI is offering up to $100,000 on top of that. As of this recording, no arrest has been made in connection with the actual kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. The hearing, July 2, and what it means. So let's come back to Derek Colella, and to July 2. He was scheduled to stand trial on June 23, 2026. A federal trial in Tucson, on 2 charges that could carry significant prison time. He had been out on bond since February, subject to electronic monitoring. Then, a motion to continue was filed and granted, and in place of a trial, a different hearing was calendared. A change of plea hearing. In the federal system, a change of plea hearing is precisely what it sounds like. A defendant who has previously pleaded not guilty indicates they intend to change that plea. In most cases, that means a guilty plea, and guilty pleas in federal court often come with some form of negotiated resolution between the defendant and prosecutors. What we do not know, because it has not been publicly confirmed, is what, if anything, was negotiated. Whether there is a plea agreement, whether there are conditions attached, whether prosecutors asked for something in return, what we can say is this. Derek Colella was following the Guthrie case closely from the start. He told the FBI he was watching the news coverage. He found the family's contact information from that coverage. He was paying close attention. Now, in the same week that investigators confirmed they believe the original ransom notes came from the real abductor, the man who inserted himself into this case is walking into federal court to change his position. The timing may be a coincidence. Cases move on their own timelines, for their own legal reasons. Plea hearings are scheduled when defendants and attorneys are ready. But in a case that has produced almost no public movement on the core question, who took Nancy Guthrie, any shift in any related proceeding gets scrutinized. Colella knows something about how he came to have the family's contact information, about what online spaces he was moving through when he found it, about what he saw and heard in those early days when the ransom note world was active and chaotic. Whether that knowledge matters to investigators, whether it has ever mattered to investigators, is something we don't know. What we know is that on July 2nd, he is walking into a courtroom in Tucson, and this case, as it always does, is asking us to wait. The bigger picture, what has 5 months given us? It is worth stepping back for a moment and taking stock of where this investigation actually is. 5 months in. No arrest in the kidnapping, no body recovered, though the second ransom note, now believed by investigators to be from the actual abductor, says she died shortly after being taken. Nancy's family has said they believe those 2 notes are real. What does that mean for the search? It means the family has been asking, publicly and privately, for the return of Nancy Guthrie's remains. Savannah Guthrie said as much in the days following the June 22 reports, asking on the Today Show for anyone with information to come forward. It means that if investigators believe she is no longer alive, the nature of the investigation shifts. Finding the person responsible becomes the central mission. Finding her remains becomes a parallel mission. Securing any form of justice, in a case with no body, no confirmed identity of the suspect, no named person of interest, becomes the long game. Legal experts have weighed in on the viability of a no-body prosecution. Former prosecutors and defense attorneys have noted that while no-body cases are harder, they are prosecutable, when the forensic evidence and circumstantial case are strong enough. What's been made public in the Guthrie case, the specific details in the ransom notes, the DNA from the gloves, the doorbell footage, the pacemaker data, represents a starting point. But a starting point is not a case. There are leads that haven't been disclosed. Tips under active review. International dimensions the FBI has been examining. Search efforts in the Sonora region of Mexico that volunteer groups participated in based on anonymous tips. The FBI has received over 13,000 tips. The reward stands at more than $1 million total. Billboards have been placed in California and Arizona with the suspect's description. And yet, nothing public has broken the case open. Not yet. Derek Colella did not take Nancy Guthrie, but he is a thread in a case that is still, after 5 months, mostly made of threads. The FBI believes the ransom notes were real. Investigators believe she died, not long after being taken. Her family believes it. Her daughter has said as much, on national television, while somehow finding the composure to still come to work. July 2 is a court date, a change of plea hearing for a man who sent texts he claims were just a test, who watched a family's anguish on television and saw an opportunity, and who has now, apparently, decided that not guilty is not where he wants to be. What comes out of that hearing may tell us something. Or it may be one more procedural step in a case that seems to move in small steps, quietly, with most of the real action happening out of public view. What we know is that Nancy Guthrie's family is still waiting, and so is anyone watching this case, for the one development that finally makes everything else make sense. If you have information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, you can call the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov. You can also contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900 or call 88-CRIME. The reward stands at $1 million from the Guthrie family, plus up to $100,000 from the FBI. If this video gave you something to think about, if you're following this case and want to be the first to know when we update it, please subscribe to this channel. Every subscriber makes it possible for us to keep covering this story as it develops. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. All information presented is based on publicly available reporting, official law enforcement statements, court records, and verified news sources. Nothing in this video should be interpreted as a definitive conclusion about guilt, innocence, or the outcome of any ongoing investigation or legal proceeding. Details in active investigations can change. If you have information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. The Guthrie family and FBI are offering rewards for information leading to her location or the arrest of anyone involved.